Thank you so much for coming in. I'm just so honored to be in this building with this incredibly rich history. I'm glad I got to hear about that. I want to thank Doris for really arranging this and being such a great partner with the rest of the very small 12-person team at the Oregon Education Investment Board, and to the board members who are here, Nicole and Kate, thank you. So I wanted this to be mainly a dialogue, but what I know is it's usually important for people to get to know a little bit about who's this person in this role and why are you committed to it. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about that. A lot of people are talking about telling your narratives. I do think that's important. So I want to begin just talking a teeny bit about my father. And my father was a flying tiger in World War II. And as you know, there's very few of the flying tigers left. But when we were growing up, my dad always said two things. He said, when you were at war, there were two things you wanted. And the first thing was to come home. And I accomplished that. And the second thing was to eliminate discrimination, this horrific discrimination that happened during World War II. And he said, we made a dent, but there's so much more to do. And my dad believed deeply that education was the great equalizer. It was through education that we were going to eliminate discrimination. And he held education and educators in the highest of esteem. And I remember when I would go to the doctor, he would say, honey, be respectful to the doctor. And no, if it wasn't for an educator, that doctor couldn't be a doctor. And when I went to see the rabbi, he would say, honey, honor your rabbi. But no, if it wasn't for an educator, that rabbi couldn't be a rabbi. So there's a real high value in our community, in my family, around education, and a responsibility around education. And so I think it was very natural that I decided to become a teacher, and through my teaching become a teacher advocate for kids and a leader and stuff like that. I would just say, Kay mentioned a few of these awards, and I just want to say that one thing my father kept saying after the war and as he grew us up, he said, honey, sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself for the greater good, and never forget that. As you do whatever it is you're going to do in life, never forget sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. And so when I came to Springfield in 2003, I had a number of students who came and talked to me about the sense of discrimination they felt in their community, about a sense of loneliness, isolation, the feeling that people didn't believe in them, didn't hold high expectations for them. And these were students, and it was a group called Safer Alliance for Equity and Respect who brought them to me. And we started to put together a diversity plan, which I thought was really terrific. One of the values around the diversity plan was to understand white privilege, and that created a real commotion in my community. There was a board meeting with about 300 people. After that, there were a number of people who were having school board members run against the current school board member, basically to get rid of me because they didn't want those conversations in our community. And we stayed strong, and we moved forward, and we just kept getting more and more people in the community to really understand the discrimination, the lack of expectations. And I'm really happy that I got to stay, I got to grow as a community, and I think do good work on behalf of children. So I want you to know I'm in this job to make a difference for kids. I know there's a tremendous achievement gap, and that's my job along with many other things, but that's something I'm really passionate about, that we have to change on behalf of your children, the children in your community, your children's community, children's children, and just children in general. So that's just a little bit about my background that I did want to share with you. I wanted to say my plan was to retire. I have a daughter who has two wonderful grandchildren. I'm their Bubby. They call me Bubby. That's Yiddish for grandma, and I love it. And I wanted to spend a lot more time with them. My daughter's finishing her dissertation. And then the kids at school, when I was leaving, they had a retirement party for me, and the students gave me wonderful advice, like become a ninja, and that sounded pretty cool to me. I love this one, walk every day with a panda. This one, because I was a real literacy to me is really key. I think it's the key to success all along the pathway. So the student said read every day on top of a school bus. So I thought that was pretty cool. I used to ride the school bus a lot with students, so they know I'm kind of into being with them on school buses, because you can talk to kids when you're in the school bus and have some really informal conversations. The last one, which was my favorite one, was never, ever, never, ever read another email. Wouldn't you go, yes? Now, I do know now that I'm in this job, I'll be reading lots of emails, but that was good advice. But really, why I decided to change my path and start as the interim and become the chief education officer is because I believe so deeply in where the state is going. I mean, I really do believe in what we're calling a birth to career and college-ready pathway. And I believe, given our governor and people in leadership roles like Kay and Doris and many of you in this room, that we really can make it so every child can obtain their dreams and be whoever they want to be. And I know you've all done this, but go in a classroom of a kindergarten, because there is more possibility in the classrooms of kindergartners than you'll ever see anywhere. Those students believe anything's possible, and it is our job to make sure that anything is truly possible. So that's why I decided to come out of my retirement. I was retired for a weekend, and it was really a great weekend. So, and I've made a strong commitment to my family and my grandchildren that I'll still spend lots of time with them. So that's what I do in any spare time that I have. So I want to talk just a little bit about OEIB, what our job is, what we do, and then I really want to open it more to questions and have a conversation, because I think that's what's really important. So when I first got this job, a lot of people said, really explain to me what OEIB does. It's really confusing, and what does it do in relationship to Oregon Department of Education? So I'd like to kind of shine a light on that if I could and get some clarity around that. So the Oregon Education Investment Board basically does 4 major things. And the first thing is that it creates the seamless system of education. So we're really looking at birth to career and college ready, college and career ready, in making it so every child moves successfully along that pathway. So we have to develop it so that becomes the reality for every child. The second thing, and one of the ways we really do that, is through managing transitions. We all know there's a tough transition between preschool and kindergarten. Sometimes more for the moms and dads or the guardians than for the children. Just letting your children go into the public school system is really a tough transition, but there can be tough transitions there. We know going from elementary school to middle school can be a very difficult transition. And we also know that if students are not on track at 9th grade, meaning they have six college credits, that's when students begin to think, I'm not going to graduate with my peers, I'm going to drop out. And so we also know if students have 9 college credits as seniors, that the likelihood that they'll go on to college is substantially increased. So that's the second thing that we really do is, first we develop that pathway. We manage those transitions on the pathway. And one way we manage them is to hold a strong vision around 40-40-20, 40% of our students in 4-year colleges graduating from, 40% graduating for 2 years, and 20% going into the world of work, ready to be successful in work, and to hold the skills to go to college if they ever choose to go back to college. So that's the ultimate goal. We've got to manage the transition. And then the other things we have to do is break down the barriers along that pathway. So I've begun to tell people, you can call me a barrier buster. I mean, that's my job, is to find out what are these barriers and to really work with all the partners to make sure we are eliminating the barriers that prevent children from being successful. The other thing we know about the pathway is if you start early, the trajectory for kids to be successful really increases. So we know if students come to kindergarten ready to learn, that means their success going on that pathway through all of the grades is going to be much better. We know if students are reading at grade level in 3rd grade, the trajectory for them to graduate and go on to whatever they want to do after high school is the possibility is substantially increased. So that's a really important thing about this pathway, is to really start at the early end and start getting success all the way along the pathway. The third thing we do, so we develop the pathway, we manage the transitions, we know the barriers, we work to get rid of them. Those are the first two. Then the next thing that we do is we recommend key investments, and we recommend those to the governor's budget, and we recommend those to legislators. In this year, there has been $75 million in investments that have gone to communities, or are in the process of going, all the money's not out yet, to really support students. And the other thing that did happen is that more money has gone out to our public schools than in a very long time, since 2003. So we make recommendations, and then the last thing we do is that we budget to outcomes. And I think budgeting to outcomes is easiest understood at the community college and college level. Right now, community colleges and colleges get their funding based on how many students are enrolled. The way the system's going to shift is that they're going to get their funding based on how many students get their GEDs, how many students get their associate degrees, how many students complete a transfer module, how many students get a BA, how many students get a master, how many students get a PhD. So the money's going to follow the outcome we want for our children and adults. The same thing's going to happen in early intervention. We're going to learn what are the programs that are helping students come to school ready to learn, and once we know what those programs are, those will be the programs that we'll be funding. So, because that's the outcome we want, is that students come to school ready to learn. So that's what the OEIB does. We're really about the what and the why. We're not implementers. So even with the money that we've given money towards quality teaching. And the money we give towards quality teaching, we then hand it over to the Oregon Department of Ed, who then takes that and works to get it out as sometimes competitive grants, sometimes the money is distributed to everyone. It just depends on what it is. So we're the what and the why, and the other organizations become the implementers. So any questions about that, just general about OEIB? How do we get our funding? Good question. Our funding for the Oregon Education Investment Board comes from the legislators. So we're not an organization with a lot of funding that stays in our office. There's 8 of directors, including me, and then there's 4 wonderful support staff. And then in addition to that, we have a small budget, but most of the money goes to the other organizations. But our money in our positions come from the legislators. So other questions? Yeah. Okay, so the question is, what are the measurements that we use to determine if the partners are doing what they're doing? So I kind of referred to it, but one thing we did with the Oregon Education Investment Board, I think it was 2 years ago, we developed these things called achievement compacts. And what those are really the critical points for students to be successful along the pathway. So coming to kindergarten ready to learn, there's a kindergarten assessment that's going to tell us, and we've worked with assessment experts to develop that tool. Reading at grade level by 3rd grade, we're using standardized tests. It was the Oaks. We'll be moving into Smarter of Balance. 6th grade is an attendance measure, because what we know is if students stop attending, then there's a lot of things, the problems. They obviously can't learn the content if they're not there. Often where they go if they're not in school ends up sending them in a direction that we're not wanting them to go. So it's attendance in math in 8th grade, then and that's tested by a standardized test again. In 9th grade, it's 6 credits, which is being on track, 6 credits in your freshman year. And we get that from the schools give us that information. In the 9th grade, 9 college credits, we get that from schools. So what we're really trying to do is any of the money we allocate we're trying to do it in a way that moves these measures along the pathway. And then there are measures in higher ed too, but those are sort of what I talked about, like the increase in the number of GEDs, associate degrees, and the community colleges and universities report those to us. So those are the broadest measures that we use. Other questions? Okay, so let me talk to you about another really important piece about this. The other thing the OEIB did, which I believe is probably the most important thing we did, is that we passed a policy called the equity lens. And what that policy is saying is that absolutely everything we do, we need to do from an equity lens. And we need to hold ourselves accountable, and we need to hold each other accountable. I brought a copy of the equity lens here. I'm being told that this is becoming a leading piece of policy, not only in our state, but in other states. There's a number of really core beliefs. I actually love them all, but the two that sort of really speak to me is that having a second language is an asset. It is really a terrific thing, and it needs to count. And then the second thing is that the cultures and the histories of our learners is to be celebrated and to be understood and to be embraced. So those are just two examples of some of the core beliefs that really guide this equity lens document. Of course, another important thing in the equity lens is that we have the people who work with children reflect the cultures in our state, and we all need to work towards that too. So we have the pathway, we have the achievement compact with the measurements, and it's all got to be looked at through the equity lens. And that's one of the things I know we all have concern here, is that we do find students in the gap. I know you're all aware of this data, but we know that students of color, right now more students of color end up in jail than other students. That's not okay. We also know that that the graduation rate for Caucasians are like 68.5. For students of color, it's 60%. That graduation rate's not high enough for any, but the gap, the disparity is not okay. We know that students of color are disciplined at a much higher rate, about twice the rate of other students. And I spent a day with this wonderful woman at the Portland Parent Union, and I heard stories about children week one were being told, parents were being told that their children week one of school did not belong in classrooms. And that's not okay. And that's something that is something we have to work very, very hard on. We know there's an over-identification of students of color into special education, and that's not okay. And so this is the sort of work we're all here to do together. I can't do it alone. We need to do it as our communities. And but I want you to know I'm very committed to changing that data, and that's going to be one of the major things that we'll be working on. Yes.
Yeah, when you were asked about your benchmark for achievement, you gave us a list of what we expected students to do. But I think part of the question is, what do you expect these implementers, as you described, who are going to implement all these things to do? What are their benchmarks for attacking these issues that you're identifying?
So I think, and I think maybe actually you were asking that same question and I didn't answer it well. I apologize. So how are the implementers, that would be me, I mean, and people like ODE, how are the people who in schools and community colleges, how are they held accountable? Well, it's different at different places. I mean, if we're looking at K-12, they have a report card. Each school has a report card. It's a new report card this year. It's much better than others in the sense that it's more understood by parents and community members. It also takes a school that looks like your school and it compares you to other schools that look like your school. So if you see that your school isn't achieving as well as others, as parents, as community members, you have a right to say, we need to change this, the way the data is. So at K-12, there definitely is the report card. The other thing that happens in K-12 is that what we do is we identify schools that are called model schools. These are schools that are beating the odds in terms of when you look at all the other schools that have similar demographics, they're achieving at a much higher rate. And then we have priority and focus schools. Those are the schools that are achieving the lowest 15% in the state. And what we do is we try to learn from the model schools, but at that point the priority and focus schools are given a coach who knows the research-based best practices from the model schools or from the other resource. Their job is to go in and to work with the staff, not in a way, you know, that really moves the dial. So they're accountable to make sure their results, so that things are changing in terms of that. So that's basically what's happening in K-12. Now remember, I talked about part of the job of OEIB is to recommend investments. And we've by no way decided on what's the new investments, but a conversation that's come up is, so the bottom 15%, what if you're number 16? Or what if you're number 20? That's not okay to be at the bottom of the 20% schools that aren't achieving. So there could be an investment that says 40% or 50% of the schools that are underachieving. You need to have a coach, you need to learn from the best practices. And I'm just proud to say in Lane County, the one model school is in Springfield School District where I did my work. So, and it's actually where my grandbaby goes. So I still spend a lot of time in that school. And when you're in these schools that are model schools, you can see so clearly what's happening there that makes a difference. And we have to make sure that happens in all of our schools. At the higher ed, really what's going to start happening, if they're not producing the outcomes, they're not getting the money. I mean, that's now changing to this outcome-based system is going to happen this year. There's a committee that's looking at that and re-looking at funding formulas, so you're funding to the outcomes. So that's not done yet. In early intervention, it's the same thing. It's going to be, we're going to find the programs that really work with our children in a way that honors the cultures of our children, that help them have the skills to be successful in kindergarten, and those are who we'll fund. So, yeah.
We have several questions going on, so I saw your hand first.
I just want to know what.
And if you could,
I just want to know what determines model school. What are the factors?
Can you hear in the back? No.
I think, is that on? I don't know if it's on.
I just want to know what factors determine a model.
So what factors determine a model school? You know, the factors that determine the model school are basically the standardized testing that all kids take. Now, we're not in any way saying that's the only thing that's a model school, but that's the comparator we have. It has to be equal measure. So when you look at the Oaks test, or what will become the Smarter Balance test, you start looking at which of the schools, how well does kids achieve, and then you also do look at other factors like the number of students referred to special ed and stuff like that. So it's mainly the stuff you'll see on the report card.
So you talked a little bit about the governor's $75 million. So you spoke a little bit about the governor's $75 million for strategic investments. Can you speak a little bit about what those strategic investments are and how that funding is going to funnel down to community-based organizations that are trying to improve outcomes for kids of color?
That's a great question. The question is, how does that money funnel down, and how does it get to the community organizations that are really working with communities of color and showing that they're making a difference? And so, you know, the money is there for a lot of different things. One of it is reading and early reading, because we know that makes a difference. Another thing is quality teaching, making sure we have the kind of teacher in front of every child that you would want your child being instructed by, because we know no matter what other things we do, a quality teacher makes a tremendous difference. There are some money allocated for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. In STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, in math. There's some money focused towards girls in that area. And there's money really focused towards helping students, particularly students who are struggling, at-risk students who are struggling. So that's the different places they're allocated. At this time, the way the money gets allocated is after the legislators create the allocation, it goes to the Oregon Department of Education that really develops the criteria, and that criteria becomes a proposal, a grant proposal. It goes out to the field and people get to apply for it. So that's how it's happening right now. Now, I think a conversation that should continue to happen is, can there ever be a time that the money goes straight to a community organization and doesn't have to go through another state organization to get there? That's a conversation I think we need to stay in, because that's much more direct. And so that's a good thing. And that would be done just like we're saying with community college, or we're saying with higher ed or preschool. That would go to the groups that are showing they're making a difference, that have data that says they're making a difference. Yeah.
How will the equity lens be applied to the RFP process?
So initially, just like I always have this with me, people are looking at this for a proposal. So for example, if something's going out around students at risk, one of the criteria could be, and I don't believe those proposals have gone out yet. Do you want to talk to that? Why don't you? That's great. Thank you. She's from Oregon Department of Ed.
So Markeisha Smith, Oregon Department of Education in the Equity Unit. And so one of the things that we've proposed at ODE is that any RFP that is going out to the field actually comes through our unit first, so that our expertise can get, eyes on that. We can lend some perspective if things don't look like they're quite the way that they should be. So that's the way we're handling that at this time. So any RFP is going directly through our unit first. So
what would be an example of that?
So for example, just recently there was a grant, that the collaboration grant, I think around teacher mentoring. And so one of the things is, before that went out to school districts, it actually came through. I was one of the reviewers that looked at that and made some suggestions for how we could really look at that to make sure that it was equitable in terms of how the monies were being distributed. And they actually went back and had to do some revision to that before it was posted. So that's the process. And our office also has, our unit also has specific grant monies that are for closing gaps. And so one that just recently came out yesterday was for African American students, and that is directly geared towards nonprofit organizations. So, yeah.
Okay, so did everyone hear that went out yesterday? Can you tell people where did they get that RFP?
So if you go to the Oregon Department of Education website, under news and announcements, I think it just was this last evening, so it may be the first or second thing that's posted there. There's also a link for it under the equity closing achievement gap. There's another kind of hot link there that you could click on and find it, and there's a Word document with the requirements, and I'm the contact person for that, so if you have questions about that.
Thank you. So other questions?
I don't know if the last statement addressed what my statement is, or my concern, and that is working within schools for the last several years, both on the middle school and the high school level, right here in this community. What I have seen continually in working with an agency that strives for excellence for our children, and also sitting on boards that are addressing the achievement gap, what I have seen over and over are these conversations, which I respect. I respect the process of collecting data, but my concern is how long we stay general with these things, and when does the support that we're talking about actually get to the students, get to the kids? Because I've worked with middle schoolers, I've worked with high schoolers, and also participated in the redesign effort for our high schools. Over and over at that table, the realization is we can talk about redesigning the high schools, and we need to, for sure, but redesigning a high school without going back and looking at kindergarten all the way through sets us up for a continual cycle over and over and over. So I heard you say that part of this initiative, or part of this funding, is to go to assure that that child in kindergarten, who's still very open and still very, easy to, at that point, really engage in making a difference to see them continue to dream and move forward. My concern is that the reality is that that's not happening. It's not happening. Right here in this community, it's not happening. And I see kids doing what you said, dropping out, giving up earlier than high school today because they don't feel like they can succeed. And the behavior problems that we're seeing, the kids dropping out, getting involved in gangs because that's where they feel they can fit in, they're accepted. And a lot of that is because whatever the system is in the school is not satisfying in meeting them where they are. So again, I guess to summarize this, my concern is when does the generalization get to our kids in the school? Because if it stays at from state to whatever the next district or whatever, that's fine, but when does it get to the kid? When does that integrate to the kid themselves to sit down and find out what they need, why they're struggling, and what we can do to help them?
So thank you. So what I would say is right now there's been a disinvestment in education. There has been a reinvestment in education. The governor has 3 stages. One is raise the floor. That's how much money goes out to buildings, and I know you're asking beyond that. The second one is create some strategic investments. We're right now just beginning to get those strategic investments out, and many of those, like the one that was just referred to, is to get programs that are being successful in more places so we can be on the ground and really be working with our students to really shift and make a difference. And I know there's many people sitting in this room who are part of programs that really have successful records of being able to intervene with students and stuff like that. So the investments are going out. I mean, I would say as a state, this is what, and people can agree with this or not agree with it, but Oregon historically has sent all the monies out to the buildings and didn't hold back any to be strategic, and we haven't gotten the results we wanted. We're not close to the top as a state who does what's best for kids. And so to keep doing what we've always done, we're trying to say we want more money going to buildings, but we have to make strategic investments too. So I'm asking us all to just really try that out and see if it works. I think that is critical. I do think starting at the younger age. So here's an example I'm just going to give you from my own personal experience. There is something called response to intervention. What response to intervention is, I'll just give you an example. When kids come, how it used to be, when kids come to kindergarten, they even come to first grade, and if the child didn't seem to be at the skill level of the other kids who were struggling in one way or other, they got referred to a school psychologist. And sometimes people waited and waited to see what the school psychologist said, and the school psychologist couldn't get to them for 2 months. Response to intervention says if a child is struggling, the next day there's an intervention, and the child stays right there in the classroom, but then you have to change structures to make that happen. So for example, if I'm a teacher and now I've got 30 first graders in my classroom, how do I really differentiate? Well, there's models that let you do it. An easy one's called Walk to Learn. And what that is for 30 minutes in reading, you're all together because you're a community and you need to be together. But after that, for the next 60 minutes, you go to your skill level. And that changes different times. So we've got to create the structure. So response to intervention, we do have data that shows the schools who use response to intervention are getting a better result. So we're doing a strategic investment in response to intervention. So what we are saying is we have to find those things that are working. We have to put them out in more places. And if they continue to work at your school, in your school, in your school, in your school, eventually it's got to be everywhere if we know. But right now we're just taking the models and spreading it farther to make sure it is an intervention that works. And that is on the ground. Those sorts of things are on the ground.
And the response to interventions, are those skills that you're also giving to the parents to help make sure that the children are meeting and reaching those goals that they're trying to meet? Because I hear what you're saying. I've been going to a lot of meetings, and I keep hearing people sit around and, oh, we're going to make this model, we're going to make these skills, and we're going to sit here and I've wasted 3 hours of my day sometimes just listening to people put things together. After you put it together and implement it into the school, what tools are you also giving the parents to make sure that the kids stay ready and to get ready to the next level? Because there's a lot of parents that don't have the education to teach their kids. So I hear all this money being flying around, but what are we also doing with the parents?
Yeah. So actually, yesterday, Doris is helping us lead what we're going to be doing in our work with parents. And one conversation that came up yesterday, there's some money going out for early reading, and we know that's important. Is why don't we get real specific with parents now and say, okay, since there's money going out, let's make parent training part of it, and let's bring parents together and show them, how you really work with your children to make them strong leaders, strong readers, because we know that leads to a really good trajectory. So we're right now focused on that. I agree with you. That's really critical.
So Nancy, first of all, welcome. Welcome to the neighborhood. And you're just a few blocks away from Jefferson High School, Ockham Green, Woodlawn, and a number of schools that are really under siege. There's been a number of questions around the resources, and my question was about resources, but I want to, since you tried to answer that question, take it a little bit different direction in that you talked about programs that work, you talked about model schools. My concern is that the RFP process, from what we understand, and Markeisha tried to give an explanation about the equity lens, but it's still just a process that we'll all just have to go through. The question from the back was about how do we get the resources to the kids? So since you're in my neighborhood, I'm gonna tell the whole truth. See, so SEI is a model program. We're one of the few model programs deemed that by ODE just recently. So we have a successful program, but we'll have to go through an RFP process and hope that we can successfully navigate that against any number of other organizations that aren't deemed a model program. So the question becomes, if in fact we're looking for those things that actually work, at some point through the equity lens, you almost have to sole source it to those that work. At some point, if we really want to get it to the kids, and Nancy, we've had this conversation before, so I'm going to keep throwing it to you, because at some point, the RFP process has to be shaped in a way through the equity lens, and if in fact deemed by ODE as a model program, I'm sorry for anybody else in here that's running the program, but if we deem to be by your own standards a model program, then I've not gotten that phone call from anyone at ODE. I ought to be getting a phone call asking me, how are you so successful, and how you ought to be throwing money at us to do this work. And that's not actually happening, and we can continue to talk about this, and we had asked the question about money. Really, it's not that much money. So the woman back here said, it's not that much money, y'all. The $75 million, after you cut it up for the strategic investments, is only a small amount of money for the entire state. So in your role, I think, first of all, we got to figure out how to get more money, and then how do we get it to the programs that actually work on the ground?
And I'm going to be very specific about what you can do. In the last legislative session, when the strategic investments were made, what was decided is they would go through ODE. Right now, this coming year, there's a big conversation about budgeting to outcomes. That's the right conversation. I think what all of us have to do, and I will be an advocate for this, is whoever can get the outcome should get the resource. It's a whole different paradigm for people to ever think of giving state money to anyone other than a state organization. But that's the conversation I'm going to put in the room, and that's the conversation you need to put in the room, and maybe we can put that conversation in the room together, because I'll tell you this, when I became a superintendent, I started looking at data, and I found a group of kids, and these group of kids were having high behavioral referrals, were not passing classes, and I brought these kids together, and they were the brightest kids, and what I saw immediately, these were very artistic kids, to put them in a traditional classroom was not going to work for them. And we created an Academy of Arts and Academics. 83% of those kids are going on to college. They have the best reading scores, the best writing scores. We've been asking kids to change for schools, and schools have to change for kids. That school became so popular, right, that kids from other districts wanted to come, and we would have kids come from other districts. And when the kids came from other districts, they'd have to wait each year to find out if they'd get released from their superintendent the next year. And I had parents calling me over the summer in tears because their kids were successful in that school. I called the superintendents up and said, you keep your money. We want the kids. Because your kid, these kids are successful here. Now, the school board I worked for said, Nancy, you can't just keep letting kids in without taking money. So we became a charter school. And then any child who wanted could come. So it's not popular to be a superintendent who believes in charter schools, but I believe in whatever works for kids. And if a charter school works for kids, I'm all there for it. If a public school works best for kids, I'm all there. I really actually think it's about choice. That kids need lots of opportunities. That was our first charter school. We brought a second military school in because 25% of the kids were Springfield's kids going out to another community. We brought that school home because we wanted kids in Springfield to be educated that. We started an online charter school. Well, it wasn't a charter school. We started an online school because certain kids learn with online. Certain kids learn in an art academy. Certain kids learn in in a traditional high school. So it's all about, in my mind, getting the resource to people who are getting the results. And I will say that anytime, any place, anywhere, because that's what I believe.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here. I want to segue into a student comment. And she wants to tell you why she's successful. Annie Ellie?
So, I'm Annie Ellie. I go to Lincoln High School. I'm a sophomore. And what helps me be successful is somebody who is there with me at school all the time. Somebody who makes sure I go to class on time, who makes sure I do my homework, who is there when I need to talk to. Like, personally, I need someone who can just be there whenever I need them and make sure that I am doing my work all the time.
Okay, so we know.
And do you have someone who does that? Who helps you?
And
And who is she with? Okay. Well, congratulations. Thank you.
There.
It's not really a question. It was just something in response to what she said. I'm Brianna Vance, and I went to Jefferson High School, and I'm in the SCI program, and I've been in the SCI program, and now I'm in the Portland Teachers program here with Deborah right here. And I just wanted to say that how she said what helped her be successful was somebody always there. And the person that helped me be successful was my SCI coordinator, which was always there, always pushing me, always sitting there having that one-on-one time with me. And it was more of a, not really like a teacher to student, but it was more of a parent to daughter. So I think somebody there that's always there and always consistent and always know where you're from and where you're coming from and where you want to be is somebody that will always help you become a better person in school, outside of school.
So I have a question regarding, you've talked about budgeting based on outcomes. And think about a kid's education, there are a lot of social economical factors. So it's not just having a good teacher, but a lot of families have a lot of challenges at home, you know, working 2 or 3 jobs, not being there for the kids when they come back from school. I mean, in those cases, you know, that'll impact the students' academic achievement. And my concern is that if you're gonna be budgeting based on outcomes, and if we have good teachers in school, but we have other factors, and it's going to impact specifically neighborhoods. So does that mean that the schools that are already doing well will have more and will continue to receive more money, and the ones that parents face a lot of challenges that may not be able to be there for their kids? What happens in that combination when
A really important question. And so budgeting to outcomes is not just about what used to happen is there's an absolute standard. So, and I'll compare, Springfield in one side of town, there's about 90% poverty. Comparing that to a Lake Oswego where there might be 1%, well, there might not be any or 1%, and expecting the same outcome, you can't look at it that way. You've got to look at the growth. What kind of growth are they making? So really what we're talking about, and remember, through an equity lens, we're really concerned about the kids who haven't gotten to, the meet or exceed standards. So I think we're really focused on those programs. We need to let all kids move up, but definitely really work with the kids who are in the gap. And I think that is a real focus for us. Ever since we've had the equity lens, many of us have been committed to it before. One thing I didn't mention, which is another big strategy with the Oregon Education Investment Board, we have these achievement compacts, but there's now things called regional achievement compacts. Those are, people can apply to do a regional achievement compact in your own communities, because the governor and I know people on the board, believe deeply it happens in a community. So if you and a group of people wanted to put together an achievement compact where you start working across, it's kind of like All Hands Raised in Portland is one example. They actually did get a strategic investment to really keep bringing partners together, to keep working on, in their case, it's 9th grade, success, 9th grade. So we really believe once the regional achievement compacts where communities come together and can direct what they really need, that's when it's going to become more on the ground and more possible. So
I have a question, Dr. Gold. My question is, I know you talk about raising the expectations for the students, but I find it very difficult as a retired educator when you have counselors and teachers deciding who makes it in special programs and who don't. And many times you have intelligent black students who are being totally missed, totally being pushed to the side, and then they wonder why those students lose the interest or become disengaged in education. So my question is, what can we do to change those situations, those scenarios around, and stop just having the counselors and teachers as the gatekeepers, but opening up those subjects that all students, including African American students and Hispanic students, can take to move up where they need to be?
Good question, and there's many things, but what I would say is there's a numbers of schools who are making AP advanced placements courses available to all students. So there's programs who are switching the way they look at it, because one thing that's happened, which to me is really unfortunate, a child might be have a skill deficit, like there's a skill they don't know, but that doesn't mean they lack smarts. That means they lack of skill. And sometimes we put kids who lack skills in drill and kill programs as opposed to higher level thinking programs that really get them engaged. And there's places all over our state who are beginning to look at that very differently and beginning to open programs. That's just one example of it. The other thing, and I can't say this enough, is that we need people who reflect our children, because there is still a lot of bias in our organizations. And my experience is until you bring people of different cultures who can point out this bias, people don't even know it's there, and it's got to be pointed out. And so, and there's strategic investment in that too.
They gave me the microphone, so I think I get to talk. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much. I hope that you take time to look at what black folks have done to educate their kids. Strategic place that we have against children in this community. Right. SEI is only one. There have been others, the Black Education Center. Many people we don't need strategies only from the RTI folks at U of O, wherever they are doing response to intervention. In fact, there are critical things that we need to do. Look at, since you mentioned RTI, I hope you take time to listen to some of our voices. We don't have time to go into detail today, but we'd like to continue this dialogue. We're very concerned about the fact that we don't get considered about these things. There are black educators who know how to educate these kids. You have mentioned a couple of areas that are really important. Pedagogy and relationships. Those are real challenges to white teachers and white schools in terms of dealing with our kids. If you don't have relationships with them, you can't do anything with them.
Right.
All your systems and all your compounds never address these issues. So please keep talking to us, and let's keep talking about what it does take to educate black kids. We know a lot about that. We don't need the State Department and experts from outside to be the only source of that knowledge. In fact, let me follow up on my next point. We've been concerned, and you're here, and in part, expecting to talk with me and others about the shortage of minority teachers in the Oregon schools. We have a Minority Teacher Act. I'm a member of the Policy Education Committee. That's been one of our priorities, as you probably know. We want to make sure that programs like the one we created in Portland 23 years ago, the Portland Teachers Program, which is the model, I think you would agree.
Oh, yes, I do.
Why don't we
Absolutely.
have those programs in every university? We proposed it, we have it in the budget. These strategic investments, $75 million. We only ask for a small amount of money to make sure that all these universities train black and minority teachers who know how to work with these kids and can close the team on them. I hope that you will take time to make sure that funding comes through. I hope you will take time to look at all these programs that are successful in our community and make sure that they survive. We used to have integration specialists in all the Portland schools who helped kids in until they graduated and helped them apply for college. That was eliminated a long time ago when the push for excellence. Equity gave way years ago. We've been defunded and abused for decades. And I hope you take account of that, and we keep talking about how we do it differently. These kids need support in their school and competent teachers that can guide them, not measure them every step of the way. RTI, sometimes these kids have 5 or 6 reading teachers. My kid is in a Title I school. He just has to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Maybe I could just yell. This one's working right now. I'm going to change the battery out.
My question's following up on his and other people's concerns is who's at the table? Who has ownership? And what we're talking about is not only in getting programs done, but at the decision-making and planning level. Representation, direct representation of the people most impacted, the parents and also the community members like myself, the 80% who don't have kids in school but have a huge stake in education. How do we get these people at the top helping to make the decisions?
I want you to know Doris is writing down all of these questions, so we definitely will have them down. So
I actually wanted to address our students with disabilities. We talked a lot about the racial inequities, and we leave out the children that do have the disabilities, visible and invisible. For me personally, my son was actually pushed out of school in kindergarten. So the interventions are coming a lot too late. I know they have an initiative with Portland Public Schools where they're trying to reconnect the high school kids, but they also need to reconnect the elementary school kids that are being pushed out by the principals because they're either scared that they're going to lower their scores when their scores are already low in the schools, or they don't have they're screaming they don't have the resources to provide the kids with the things that they need to be successful in the classrooms and stuff. They're not supporting the teachers in the classroom. So those are some of the things that I'm concerned about. We also have a lack of use of technology within our classrooms. They have computer labs, but my kids a lot of times tell me the only time they get to touch a computer is when it's testing. They don't actually, and when they're getting ready to go to Common Core, they're going to be taking the test on the computer. So how much of our kids' scores are going to be way below just for the simple fact that they don't have enough use on the computer, that it takes longer for them to get through it versus other schools where they actually have technology classes every week. So our kids are going to be behind on so many different levels just because they're not getting access to the things that everybody should have access to. This is a technology world. Our kids should be doing more. they should be also having the same expectations for the kids with disabilities, because when it comes to graduation time, according to Common Core, they are going to be expected to know the same thing that the other kids in Gen Ed know, but they're not getting those, the curriculum and developing those skills that they need. So how is OEIB and ODE, how are they going to be addressing those things?
So, I mean, you talked about many, many issues, and they're really important issues. So just with the last one first, technology, that is something I'm super passionate about. I think you'll be seeing me come forward around technology, around making sure all children have access to technology for many reasons. First of all, it can transform learning. It's kids can engage in technology, with technology as a tool, and be successful in ways they haven't been successful before. It also can differentiate. So if you're a child in a 5th grade class who's reading at 3rd grade level, you can lower the reading level on a computer and you can be in the same conversation as anyone else. So there's lots of things. I think we do need to have access to technology so there can be different kinds of learning in the classroom. I also think for students with disability, assisted technology is very powerful for students with disabilities. So definitely technology is something I think is critical, and I actually have an appointment set up with the governor to talk to him about how important I think that is, and I'll be talking to the Oregon Education Investment Board about that too. So, how many other people think technology is critical, just in terms of providing? Right.
Skills in that too. So I think we need to be definitely looking at how do we help parents as well and students in that area.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Can you tell me currently now, what is the Board of Education going to be doing in regards to, you spoke about the AP classes. Well, there are some, there's a lot of high schools in the state that have AP classes and offer them to the students. But it's my understanding that you offer classes according to the size or the student body size. But when you've got schools that have small student body sizes, that therefore they only have a certain amount of teachers, then they're lacking the ability and the access to the AP classes. So what are you doing? Like, for instance, Jefferson High School, they're not offering tons of different types of AP classes. Now they are offering a strong course in biotech, and students going through that do gain access to research and things like that that help them in college, but it doesn't give them that jump start on any of the other types of AP classes that are out there. So what is the state doing now, currently, that are going to help students just like Jeff to have the access to the AP classes, even though they do have a lower attendance rate?
So, one of the things the state did do is made a huge increase in investment out to public schools. So we all know since 2003, with the disinvestment, it meant cutting classes at all of our schools. I think when people say to me, well, great, now education has more money, what I say is, but we haven't even gotten back to where we used to be in terms of how much money we put out into our communities. And we have this beautiful vision of 40-40-20 and high expectations for our kids. And so it takes more resource going out to our schools, and it also takes more resource that I think needs to be invested strategically, because it's when we make those strategic investments we're able to look at who are the people who are really doing, beating the odds and have programs that are really helping kids. So that's what I think we need to do.
This is a really incredible gathering to be able to hear all of the voices with a concern about what's happening to the kids. The Latino kids, when I came to Oregon 2.5 years ago, I could not believe. Lens will afford us an opportunity to look at these embedded racial inequities and address them from the standpoint of, are we going to continue funding them, Or are we going to really look at funding some of those areas that we talked about that are really working? As we continue working together, I'm really excited to be part of this effort and continue to promote the voice that is needed, but we need to have that voice collectively. And I think that this opportunity that Dr. Golden is giving to our community and to our state is commendable, and I thank you.
You know, I have to say I appreciate you being here today too. I think it takes a lot of guts to come here and you know, face all of this. In saying that, I would like to know, you are one person, and I think that you stand strong. You've proven that you could do that. But like I said, you're one person. So I would like to know if you feel that there are other people who think like you do and that are willing to stand strong with the things that we think that needs to be implemented and the way it should go. Because if you don't, then that means that this is a conversation, a good conversation, but that's all it is. So I need you to tell me that, I really do. I mean, I'm so serious. I need you to tell me that you have support. Now, if you don't have the right support, then, like I said, this is a conversation. Now, we will be with you as long as you are with us, but we want to know who are the rest of the people.
Okay, so let me just answer that, because I honestly believe this is a moment in time. And I'll tell you, I think our governor is a person who is an extraordinary leader. I mean, he knows education's critical. He knows healthcare is critical. He showed an extraordinary ability to work across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats. I mean, he's been able to get PERS reform, which was a very difficult thing to do. He was able to get some, loopholes closed, and he's talking about tax reform to really be, so we can have a stable education system. When your resources go up and down like this, you're spending all your time thinking of what do I cut out now, and then rebuilding, as opposed to having a stable education system. So I think this is a really critically important time. This OEIB board, their job is to hold me accountable, and I can tell you, knowing the people on the board, they will hold me accountable, and they should. And in addition to that, I really think, the people I'm working with, I mean, Doris is such a tremendous advocate for the work of children, particularly children in the gap. I mean, I'm surrounded by people, I think, who really want to make a difference, or I wouldn't be doing it, because I want things to happen for children. So
maybe after this meeting, when we get our cards and all that, put that online, maybe you can name those people for us. I mean, I would like to know, because the thing about it is that then maybe we can actually talk to those people too. Maybe we can have them to address some concerns just like you, and help them to move along with the implementation.
You know what would be a great thing? I mean, I'm just sort of talking about the people we work with, that, I really ask people who are really committed to the equity lens and who want to stand up and put their name on a list that says, I'm committed, I'm accountable, I'm working on this every day, and here's my email if anyone, or here's my contact information. That would be a great thing to do. So it might take me a few weeks to get that done, but we'll do that. I think that's a great suggestion. So Doris, you wrote that down, right? So, because both Doris and I like to follow through. The other thing, I want to give you all my cell number, 541 914 0686. If you have anything that you think is a big inequity I need to know about, call me. Or if you have any suggestions about how to really overcome barriers and make the system better, call me. I can it sometimes takes me a day to get back to you, but I will get back to you. The other thing I've heard an invitation to really come back to this community, to be in the community. I would love to do that. The only thing I'm asking for is just to know that I'm scheduled out till about December. I spent last week in Eastern Oregon, 4 days there, Had a wonderful time. Fell in love with John Day. It was just such a beautiful community. I'm here now. I'm going to the Dalles right after this, so I'm out and about, and so I do want to be here, but I have to respect the schedules I've already set up. But I definitely will come out. I'd love to spend 3-4 days in this community. Just be here and go wherever you tell me to go and see whatever you want me to see. As long as I get in a kindergarten classroom somewhere along the way, I'll be fine. I mean, it'd be great. Sorry.
And this is almost as a piggyback to the comments that have been made, but we've heard a lot about as a community and the money coming down about the accountability measures that are being set for schools and for community organizations, etc. But I guess aside from the OEIB and the great work that's being done, and individuals as yourself, what can we as a community do to hold ODE accountable? What are the achievement outcomes we need to hold ODE to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing there would be offer OD to come in and say, tell me what you're going to deliver on part of our kids and what can we do to hold you accountable. You know, I think that would be really good. I would start with partnership with them because I know Rob Saxton, who's now the deputy superintendent. He used to be Tiger Twelleton's superintendent. I know he really wants to make a difference too. So I think that's what you can do. I use these regional achievement compacts where your community really starts directing things. I think are a very powerful tool. You know, there's one in the Portland area. It's the all hand raise, but there's opportunities for more. I would suggest that.
We create our own?
That's what everyone did. Yeah, you know, when you create them, it's supposed to reflect the pathway. So what they like to see is there's some people from early intervention, people from K-12, people from higher ed, community members, business. We're trying to get cross-sector. But yeah, I think there's more opportunities for more to come about. There's 12 right now. But the power, I'm hearing you say it here, is in your communities. Communities know communities, and they know what people need in their community. And they know better about all the rich history and cultures than people outside of the community, I think. So.
I work with I work with colleges and universities chairing a scholarship program. And this is more of an equity logistical question. At the high school level, how do we get more guidance counselors into the high schools? Because when I'm trying to give money away, the biggest obstacle I hear, especially from kids, whether of all colors and all incomes, is the lack of guidance their senior year of being able to apply for scholarships or being able to apply for college in general. So why is there a lack of these crucial people to help people graduate at the high school level?
Yeah, and I think that all happened when we had a disinvestment in education and jobs had to be cut and class sizes were getting too big, and so they, you know, then in order to reduce class sizes, the people not in the classroom often got cut. But these are the really important conversations. I'll tell you, this was a conversation we had with the governor the other day, just to give you a sense. And what this governor does when an issue comes up, he says, bring me people who know the issue, and let's talk together about that. So what some school districts are doing, it's called the 5th year program. So what school districts are doing, and it's a little bit of a workaround, and is students have the 24 credits to graduate, but they don't give them their diplomas. The students agree to this. And they don't give them their diplomas, and what they do instead is keep them for a 5th year where people in the school district can help guide them into a college. So the school district ends up getting money, because if kids don't have a diploma, you get funding up to age 21. The community colleges or the four-year colleges get money. You've got someone at the high school working with someone at the university to help this child be successful. And what we're seeing is this is increasing, and kids who probably wouldn't go to school because they couldn't navigate this huge system, which is pretty huge, are now going to school because they have relationships with people who are staying in touch with them. What the governor was saying is, if that's working, if that's getting us to 40-40-20, then we need to be intentional about it. We need to know that it works. We need to invest in that, and we need to put more money towards that. Now, I went to McKay High School in Salem, which is a turnaround school, and I saw some of the most they had, I think, very few, I think it was 2 kids who dropped out. I don't want to quote a number, but very few dropped, 3 kids. 200 the year before, 3 kids who dropped out. Now, they did get an infusion of money, but money alone doesn't solve it. It's money and strategies. You know, we used to have these people called dropout prevention people. What they did instead was college coaches. So they had people who were college coaches. Their whole job is, I'm going to coach you to get to college. I'm going to coach you to get to college. That's a very empowering conversation. So I think when we say, what is it we do? Who are the people we need to get kids to college? Let's be open to different models than the traditional models. Not that a counselor's not good, but counselors have a lot of other responsibilities too. So maybe there's other ways. Again, like in McKay, I mean, I spent an afternoon at that school and I was blown away. Every message in that school was, you're going to go to college and we, the educators in this building, are going to make sure it happens to you. And there are schools that are doing that, so we have to find a solution to that. But I don't think we should jump to, exactly what it, we should look towards all the ways people are making that happen.
A few more comments back here. For me, I hear a lot of the stuff that you're saying is like pacifier. You're just saying, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit here, give a little bit there to keep us kind of quiet and calm. We're not addressing the fact that you're talking about McKay and you're talking about Eastern Oregon. We're here in Portland where our African American kids are losing out on funding because we're not considered. The real deal is that Oregon was built off of white privilege. We need somebody to stand up and say, okay, this community needs us. Somebody who's going to stand there and actually fight for us. Because right now, those McKays, they have less African Americans, less minorities. And we right here, we need help. Our school districts need help. And we need somebody who, the school board does not reflect us. So you don't have our ideas, you don't have our concerns. You don't know what it's like to be in our shoes. To go into a classroom where a teacher wants to send you out because you're crying or you're having a hard day because you ain't got no food at the house. So, I mean, I hear you pacifying us, but let's get real. We got some issues right here that need to be solved. You spent 3 days there, but you're spending half of the day here?
Well, I gave an invitation to come back.
I understand that, and that's awesome, but we need it right here.
Right.
And we're hurting right here, and we're asking, and we're here. You scheduled a meeting from 9 to 11, or it's 9 to 11. Our parents couldn't come. You can't hear their voice. You don't know their concerns because they're not here. They're at work. And so what I'm saying is, come spend a day in our shoes. Come walk the hallway. Go into a classroom here.
Yeah.
Not at Alameda. I'm talking about go to Woodlawn, go to Boise, go to Jeff, go to Benson where the sparkler system is leaking and they having fire drills because nobody's putting money in the school to fix it. Just walk in our shoes.
Yeah. I will. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
There is an acronym that escapes me right now, but it would be neglectful not to address this. Nationally, there's a push to encourage students to take classes regarding math, science, technology, because that's the wave of STEM. Thank you. STEM, because that's the wave of society. So while we're talking education, it would be neglectful not to address the fact that the pathway for our children must include that, because without that, they may can go through high school, college, everything, but still not be prepared to be able to get the jobs and the careers that are in demand at this time. Those are the highest paying jobs. Eventually, everything is going that way. My comment to that question about how we're going to address that is, now we can now look at realities. A lot of our kids are not taking classes any more than they have to regarding math, science, and technology because they're hard, it takes more time, that kind of thing. So when we talk about addressing how to accommodate students, meet students' needs, what are some ways that we can recreate the way that we present those subjects to our kids? Because it's not like they can't master them. It's just the way that it's being presented is not attractive. How can we, you know, take on things like robotics and, you know, some of these other ways that can draw kids in while they're learning and hands-on, because that's the way the world works today. And but it's important. We can't overlook that. We can't neglect it. But as educators, it's important, I believe, for us to find ways to make those subjects attractive to our kids, because they have to have it.
Yeah, and so there was an investment in STEM and STEAM. There's also an investment in career technical education. A lot of those career technical programs also have a strong science base to them, or a math base. Also, the use of technology can transform learning. So I agree with you. We've really got to work on that. And I think if we change the way we engage students, we'll see students who, you know, weren't interested get very, very interested in things like math, science.
So our next steps, I'm a coach, so I'm always interested in next steps.
Yeah, so the next steps are strategic investments are being put out. They're going through RFPs with an equity lens. There'll be models set up. We're going to be watching the models to see which ones are successful. We're going to be looking at best practices. We're going to be talking to communities. People are coming together in regional achievement compacts. We're seeing what's coming out of that. We're going to advocate for money to budget to outcomes. We're going to also you know, those are some of the things we're doing to make all of those things happen. Those are in process right now. I think we'll probably want to advocate for more money, particularly for technical CTE, career technical education, and we also want to continue to look at STEM and STEAM, since those are where the jobs are. Hi.
Hi, so my question is about early childhood. I mean, I hear you guys saying that kids are in kindergarten not ready. They're not ready to learn, but they are been on this earth from 0 to 4 or 5 before they come to you. What kinds of partnerships are you looking to make with the early learning community other than early intervention? Because those children are usually problems at that point, or they need something other than solid early childhood education what all kids need. But I don't hear, there's been a chasm for years between that community and the...
Right. I would say the thing the governor is most passionate about is early education, because his metaphor is we always throw babies in the stream and then we run downstream and try to get them out. There are early learning hubs. There's going to be, I think, 16 of them, or is it 17? 16 or 17 in the state. At the next OEIB meeting, which is November 12th, they'll be announcing who received the first grants. Those are to bring the integration of education, healthcare into your neighborhoods. They could very much be housed at a school where people really start working on that. So that is part of this. You know, I'm with you, and I get the urgency, and I appreciate everyone who's passionate, everyone who's spoken. I really appreciate the passion, because this is about your children right now, and you don't want to wait one more minute, and I get that. What I would say is the system has just been reformed. We're just getting stuff out. I mean, just like that example, I love that, what's the next steps, because I'm a next steps person. There's a lot of next steps. But this is the moment where it's going out, you know, and I'm getting a lot of feedback around it too. People are saying, well, I heard here, we don't want to, why do we have to apply for a grant? If we can just do it, give it to us. And the small regions, I mean, the rural community are saying, we don't have the staff to apply for grants. You know, a lot of districts have grant writers. So even as we've been putting things out, we're trying to figure out how to put them out better. But this is the time we have to rally around these interventions, because we believe they're going to make a difference for children. And then we need to also be thinking about what the next step is.
We're going to take one more question here, so you two can fight another. Just standing, we're going to take that. And I'm going to also ask you for your cards. If you will either leave them on the table to my right in the back, or leave them in your chair, then we will get a response posted. If you want a personal response, put your email address on the card, and we'll do a personal response as well. And then after you have asked your question and Dr. Golden has responded, I've asked Michael Alexander from the Urban League to make some remarks in the community.
So I'm the mom of a 16-year-old who, for the second time, I've taken her away from public school. The first time I homeschooled out of frustration. This time she's in a private school where she has, her class size is no class is larger than 8, where every kid has a laptop, and all of the teachers know how to use the technology to engage the students with laptops. She has science and technology fully staffed, art classes fully staffed, science labs, and those types of things. And so there are a lot of parents like me who have, in many ways, lost hope in public education and have pulled their kids out in a way. I have nieces and nephews. I want to remain hopeful, and so I want you to leave us with something that can leave us with some hope. The other thing is there are a lot of people who have been engaged in this advocacy for a lot longer than me. It's been 12 years for me, and there's people in here who've done it a long time. And I want to know, how do you plan to engage those people on the OEIB board? How do you plan to include the student voice, the parent voice, and those types of people? Because it's great to have some of the professionals in there, but a lot of those professionals have been doing it for a long time and haven't done a great job, and so they're not the right people to be there. And so you need to have some parents and some people who have been doing this and effective there on your board. So I'm hoping to find out, how do you plan to include parents and students on those boards?
Right.
Making a decision.
So when I was in Springfield, I had 29 kids who are 25 who advised me every year. I'm going to have a student advisory committee in this job, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently, because I don't want to just have 25 kids I work with all year long, because I'm not sure that's representative. So I want to have a core group that helps me plan, but we'll go out to other communities. You know, we're looking at our budget right now, but I'm really hoping to have enough money in our budget to have a community organizer who does exactly the sort of stuff you're talking about out in communities. So if you know anybody that you think would be good in a job like that, call my cell phone and give me their name, because you've all got my cell phone number. So, yeah.
My director's in here.
Yeah.
No.
And you know, I mean, all the things I've said, I hope can leave you with hope. And a governor who I have seen be tremendously courageous, an equity lens that a board that really cares deeply has put in place. We've raised the amount of money going out to schools. We got to raise it more. We're putting strategic dollars out that we think can make a difference. We have to really make those money flow more freely. And I think all those things hopefully are going to, you know, I believe they're going to make a difference, or I wouldn't be doing this. So hopefully that leaves you with some hope. And I agree with you, parents and students are critically important. So Doris and I will be champions together on that, and I know she's a tremendous champion around that. So anything else? Thank you very much. I'll come up to you after. Thank you.
Thank you.